This happened 3 days ago and is still fresh in my mind. Some minor background details about me is that I'm female, 17, autistic, and I live in the Scottish Highlands. So, for some context, my mother and I took a road trip into the city of Inverness to pick up a rocking chair my mom bought online. And since it was a warm day, we decided to go for coffee and a shopping trip afterwards. Overall, it was a great day. We stopped in for a frap in Starbucks, wandered around bookstores, DIY stores, and I bought myself a video game for my new PS4. When the day was coming to a close, around 5 in the afternoon, we were heading back to the car park, snacking on some beef pastries while my mom saw one last shop she wanted to pop into, which was a bedclothes store. I was already bored stiff, and I was eating my beef pastry, so I told my mom I would wait for her outside the store, and then come back after I found a bin to throw my rubbish away. I scanned the street looking for a bin, but alas there was none, so that meant I had to look for it. I poked my head into the store and called for my mom to tell her what I was doing, and she, of course, was apprehensive. It was understandable, since I'm her first and only child. She's 53 and went into menopause after giving birth to me at 37. She's also disabled, so there was a low chance of having another kid anyway. So I wandered around the streets looking for a bin, and that's when I met him. He was obviously homeless, and looked around my mother's age. And he was making a beeline towards me, eyes wide, ignoring all the other people on the street to possibly beg for money from. He was also about my height, 5'7", wearing a dirty green shirt, a grey tank top, and black cargo pants, with scraggly grey hair that was up to his shoulders. And overall, he just looked dazed. I immediately turned around and walked the other way. I turned the corner down this side street, which didn't have as many people as the main street, but there were still quite a lot of people. I asked a few people if they knew where a bin was, and I was pointed down the same street I came from. At the time, I wasn't really nervous about running into the homeless man again, because I assumed he had just wandered away after I walked away from him. So I walked back onto the main street. Everything was going well so far, and I could see the bin in the distance in the city square. Bingo! I could bin my rubbish and go back to the store. The roads were really busy, and traffic doesn't really seem to stop for pedestrians, so I walked along the street. I didn't expect to be stopped again if I didn't make eye contact and speed walked. But nope, the guy saw me again and stopped me in the middle of the street and asked me if I could spare any change because, quote, "I'm so hungry, I only need $3. And girls like you are always shopping. I see your bag." Unquote. I responded that no, I'm not giving out money because I didn't have any, which was obviously a lie. An attempt to walk around him to go to a city square. He stuck his arm out and stopped me, preventing me from going. I tried to go around the other way and he did the same thing, now stepping in front of me. Now, I got concerned. People were still walking down the street, passing us, and did jack shit while this guy was preventing me from walking past him or crossing the road while he's still begging for change. He even had the nerve to ask, "Are you sure?" Just when I was about to run for it, I saw a man in the traffic warden's uniform and started shouting for him, jumping up and down and waving my arms around. Thankfully, I caught his attention and he walked towards me briskly. The homeless man looked over his shoulder, called me a cunt, and ran across the street and into the crowd on the opposite side. The traffic warden asked if I was okay, and I said I was thanks to him. He offered to escort me to where I needed to go, which, of course, I took up. Thanks to him, I managed to bin my rubbish and walk back to the duvet store. Then meeting up with my mom, who, after I told her what happened, went pale and in all honesty, overreacted. Thankfully, nothing violent ever happened, and the traffic warden showed up. I still hope he's doing well. My name is John Adam Kreminski. 2 weeks ago, my brother and I were driving down the highway when we came across a woman and her child asking for a ride. She said that she had driven her car off the road and that she was just trying to get home, so we decided to pick her up. But what came after still sends chills down my spine. For backstory, about a year or so, a woman was texting and driving when she came to the turn on the highway near our house. Obviously, she didn't see it, and she ran right off the highway into the forest near the side. The impact was enough to cause a fire to the engine, and due to her being unconscious and the shitty police response time, she and her child ended up dying in the wreck. Nothing was reported on the news, seeing as it was a case-closed situation. Skip forward a week or two after the accident, and these two teenagers were making the turn on the highway when they reported seeing a young female jump in front of their car. They swerved, trying not to hit her, and ended up totaling their pickup truck instead. When they told the police what had happened, the other cars around them had said they never saw a woman, so the police assumed they were intoxicated. Months go by, and multiple people report seeing this on the side of the highway, and some say the woman was jumping in front of their car. Some even report seeing her holding a baby. Police conducted searches and had a few sketches of the woman, and no one could find who she was. More people reported seeing her, and a few even claimed of picking her up and dropping her off at a house about a mile or so away, but claim as they were starting to let her out of the car, she had simply vanished. So, skip forward a few weeks ago, and my brother and I were driving in town to see a movie that night. We lived roughly a mile away from the highway, and it was storming that night, which meant less people would be out, so we decided we'd pass on taking the usual back roads into town. We merged onto the highway, and, as we suspected, no one was there. We drove for about a mile or so before a woman and her baby jumped in front of my truck, and thank God the rain hadn't picked up, otherwise I wouldn't been able to brake in time to keep from hitting them. I rolled down my window and peeked my head outside to get a better look. "Hey miss, are you okay?" I asked politely. While staring at her, I realized that her clothes had small rips in them. "I'm fine, I just need a ride." I looked down for a second and didn't realize that it was raining, so I drove my car off the road. "Would you be able to take me back to my place? I live not too far from here." Her voice was sweet, but there was something off about it. It made my hair stand on edge. "Sure, hop in. I'll need your address, so I can plug it into my GPS and get us there." When she approached, I realized that she seemed whiter than bone. Let me turn up the heat for you. Jesus Christ, you must be freezing." She nodded and patted her baby on the back. I started driving, and about half a mile before our destination, my brother elbowed me and whispered something strange. "She hasn't blinked since she stepped into the car, and from the looks of it, she isn't breathing either." At first, I thought he was just joking around because she was so quiet, but the more I glanced back there, the more it seemed true. When we pulled up to the house, my brother and I unlocked the door for her and turned to tell her to be safe. But when we looked back, she had vanished. My brother then turned and saw something in front of him. He screamed and immediately his eyes shut and he started convulsing. His breathing was shallow. In a panic, I called for medical emergencies, informing of his symptoms. An ambulance arrived and they got his convulsions to cease. But his breathing was still irregular and they confirmed that his heartbeat was abnormally high. They had asked what had caused it, but due to shock and panic, I told them that I didn't know. A few days later, after studying my brother and concluding that he had an anxiety attack that mimicked a seizure, the doctors finally released him from the hospital. On the way home, I asked my brother what he saw before he passed out, but he just shook his head. We sat in silence for quite some time before he finally said something. "You wouldn't believe me if I said it." I told him no matter what he tells me, that it wouldn't change my position on what happened that night. He then said something that scared me and still scares me. "I saw us on the highway, and you were lying dead on the hood of the truck. The lady that we picked up was there, bloody and smiling as though she was the cause of it, and she was proud. She walked over to me and whispered static in my ear, and then she stuck her hand through my chest. You don't understand, John. I could feel her hand gripping on my heart. All of it seemed so real." He started crying, and I just sat in silence for a moment. When we got home, my brother suggested that I post a story online to see if anyone knows what may have happened. We don't do drugs and we don't drink. Both of us are very skeptical, but after that incident, I don't know what to think anymore. Him and I both agreed that we aren't going to take that highway anymore. But the other day, while on the back roads, we had heard a high pitch of static for a moment, and then stopped.